Welcome to another edition of the Monday Morning Tennis Rant. We are entering week 2 of the 2024 US Open, and I feel like some of the energy has been drained out of this tournament by both Alcaraz and Djokovic exiting early, shockingly so. However, we're going to see some fresh faces, possibly in deep stages of the men's tournament. So in today's video, I'm going to give you an update on my draw because, I made a lot of mistakes. This is one of my worst draws. There was a tremendous amount of draw busters there. I have made some pretty good picks, and some of the players that I chose to go far are still active. And on top of that, I want to focus on two matches that happened yesterday, Tiafoe Popyrin and Gauff against Navarro. And let me start off with Gauff and Navarro. And I planned to make a video about Gauff after she had lost to Schneider in Cincinnati. And I had prepared this video and I actually clipped up a lot of the comments. And I decided not to do this video because the whole Sinner story broke and it just wasn't the right time. But I'm going to use today's rant to share my thoughts on the Gauff situation. And look, I follow social media very closely. I've been doing it now for 6 years, and I've never ever seen so much negativity directed towards a player as much as I've seen it in the case of Coco Gauff. And I simply don't understand why. There's no reason to be negative about Coco Gauff. She is a phenomenal player, a US Open champion. Pegula is going to take over in the rankings, but she was the #1 American, period. Men and women combined, the highest ranked player. And there's really no reason to hate. She also happens to be a great role model, a very nice person, and it's just a great story altogether. So it is incredible how much negativity there is in the comments sections every time when Coco Gauff loses a match. And take a look at some of these comments after her loss in Cincinnati to Schneider, who, by the way, is a great player. There is no shame losing to Schneider. Same with yesterday. There's no shame in losing to Emma Navarro. And before I get into the Gauff thing, let me give credit to Emma Navarro. She's a phenomenal player. Her performance is a bit overshadowed by all the negativity surrounding Gauff, but Navarro is a complete player, has beautiful strokes, stylistically speaking. She's a phenomenal athlete, moves really well. But to me, the one stroke that stands out in Navarro and is related to some of the issues that Coco had in yesterday's match is her return of serve. Emma Navarro, both on the forehand and the backhand, returns phenomenally well. On top of that, she's a very complete player, can come to the net, finish points off there. She can slice the backhand, she can hit the drop shots. She's a fun player to watch, and she did phenomenally well in her match against Coco yesterday. So Coco in her match had 19 double faults. And I wasn't surprised to see a tremendous amount of comments saying that Coco Gauff has a horrible serve. So let's talk about double faulting at the elite level. It happens. Do you remember a few days ago? I talked about it. Novak Djokovic hit 14 double faults in his loss to Popyrin. Okay, he played an extra set. It was a 4-set loss. Coco Gauff lost in 3 sets, but the double fault numbers are pretty close. 14 for Djokovic, 19 for Gauff. Did I see any comments saying that Djokovic has a horrendous serve, that he needs to get another coach? I know he doesn't have a coach right now, but he needs to stop playing tennis and fix his serve before he steps on the court again? No, we didn't see any of those comments about Djokovic. Now, is there anything wrong with Djokovic's serve? I mean, after all, he hit 14 double faults. I can tell you there's absolutely nothing wrong with Djokovic's second serve, more specifically his kick serve. And despite not having any technical deficiencies, he still hit 14 double faults. Well, how is that possible? Well, the game of tennis involves your mind, and your mind can create changes in your technique based on how you're feeling at that exact moment in time. So when you lose trust in a shot, this can have a very negative effect. So you miss a few second serves, and all of a sudden you become more tentative, more careful, and this leads to more and more mistakes. And this is a cycle that's very difficult to break. So if you watch my video on Coco Gauff's second serve from a few days ago, yes, there are some suboptimal technical elements on her second serve. And despite these suboptimal technical elements, Coco still hits a good second serve. After all, she is a US Open champion and was ranked #2 in the world. She is also a doubles Grand Slam champion. So it's obvious, there is proof that this serve, despite having some suboptimal elements, it still works. However, when she's not feeling her best, when the confidence is not high, yes, on her second serve and also on her forehand, she can make too many mistakes. There's no doubt about that. Now, one unfortunate thing is that one of my favorite coaches of all time is being dragged into this negativity surrounding Coco Gauff, and that's Brad Gilbert. I recommend to everyone to read his two books, I Got Your Back and Winning Ugly. Brad Gilbert is not only a former top 5 tennis player, phenomenal athlete. We're talking about the mental game. He was able to beat opponents that were technically superior to him with his mind. He's an incredibly introspective guy and possibly understands the nuances of the tennis game better than anyone. So when Brad was finished with his playing career, he started coaching Andre Agassi and many other great players, and he had great success doing so. Now, despite Brad coming to Coco's team and Coco playing amazing, winning tournaments in Washington, the 1000 tournament in Canada, winning the US Open, becoming the #2 player in the world, all with Brad Gilbert as a coach. Despite all that, there is possibly thousands of comments saying that Brad Gilbert needs to be fired, Brad Gilbert needs to go, Brad Gilbert is a horrible coach. And it's just amazing to me how people do not understand the nuances of the game. On top of all that, it appears that even people that are very knowledgeable about the game of tennis don't seem to understand the nuances of the game either, because I hated to see Brad Gilbert grilled at Wimbledon on TV after Coco lost to Navarro, and the same thing happened yesterday. Brad Gilbert was grilled on TV about Coco's technique as if he was the one that made 19 double faults and as if he is the one that made 60 unforced errors in the match. What can Brad Gilbert do from the stands regarding unforced errors and double faults? Not much, because tennis is a very complex game. Now, people are saying, why doesn't Brad change her technique? Why isn't Brad changing her forehand or her second serve? Well, you gotta listen to Brad to understand why Brad is not changing those things. Because Brad said when Coco is on the practice court, she can make 30 serves in a row. So from a coach's perspective, this makes absolute sense. If a player is doing well in practice and making shots, there's absolutely no reason to start making changes and put some kind of jinx into a specific shot. And from day one, it is clear that a lot of the problems that Coco is suffering from are problems that are appearing mostly under pressure in singles, not so much in doubles, and definitely not in practice. Now, are there technical things that Coco can change on the kick serve? Absolutely. Do you make those technical changes in the middle of the US Open? Absolutely not. Coco has been playing tennis for a long time. Coco has hit millions upon millions of tennis balls. Technical changes take time to implement. This is something that you do in the off season and not in the middle of a tournament. So the fact that Brad Gilbert, one of the greatest coaches in the history of tennis, is being grilled on TV and being asked these questions makes absolutely no sense. It's not fair to him. Now you could make an argument and say, why is Brad Gilbert even on TV commentating? It's a conflict of interest, and Cahill is doing it too. Listen, the tennis world is very small, and every single person that's in tennis talking about it on TV has some sort of conflict of interest. Why? Because most of these people that are on TV are somehow involved in tennis coaching or somehow have been involved in tennis coaching, whether it's academies, whether it's private coaching, and so on. So you're going to get tons of situations where somebody's commentating on a match where there's a player that was previously coached by them. The problem is that the tennis world is very small, and naturally there's going to be a lot of conflict of interest. To be fair, when Boris Becker was coaching Novak Djokovic, he stopped commentating on TV, and then when that relationship ended with Djokovic, he went back on TV. That is for sure the best way to do it, to suspend the commentating activities while coaching a player that's on tour. That's going to be the best for the player and the coach. But again, we don't know the details. If the player is okay with the coach commentating and that was agreed beforehand, then I guess there's no problems with it. I know that Cahill, who is coaching Sinner, does not commentate on men's matches, just on women's matches. However, it was a little bit uncomfortable for Cahill being a broadcaster and being asked all these questions on ESPN. So the whole thing is weird, okay? A lot of conflicts of interest going on in the tennis world. But one thing's for sure, the hate that Coco gets is ridiculous. Take a look at her year so far. Won the tournament in Auckland, semis, Australia, semis, French, won the doubles at the French, fourth round Wimbledon, fourth round US Open. That's a great year. She got a great chance to qualify for the year-end championship. Look, in my draw, I didn't pick Gauff to go past the fourth round. I actually thought that Navarro was going to lose to Kostyuk, and I picked Kostyuk to beat Gauff because she had beaten her earlier this year in Stuttgart. And the reason why I picked Gauff to lose, because what happens with a lot of players is the following. They win a huge tournament. They come back the next year. They have all these points to defend. There's a lot more pressure, and they end up failing under that pressure. You know who else had a hard time winning a second US Open? Pete Sampras. He won the US Open in 18 and then did not play well for a while until finding his form again. So this is something that a lot of players go through. And to me, this was not a surprise at all that Coco was going to play worse in this year's hard court swing than she did in the last one, because in the last one there was a lot less pressure. She was playing freely. In this one, there was a tremendous amount of pressure, all these points to defend, and she played worse than last year. This is completely normal, completely acceptable. I do think now that all this pressure is released, Coco is going to start playing a lot better. Let's talk about Tiafoe against Popyrin. First of all, it's not fair to put the men's match on first and then the women's match in the night session. It's not fair for the players, but it's also not fair for us viewers, because that way we only get to see one match. Because listen, I fall asleep, okay? I have a hard time staying up super late. But when you have a women's match first, that's best of three, that's not going to last as long. We get to see the women's match, and then the men's match maybe starts at 9, 10, because the first one starts at 7. So we get to watch two matches. We at least catch the first two sets of the men's match before falling asleep. Having the women play second during the night session doesn't make a lot of sense. So Tiafoe against Popyrin. First of all, Tiafoe won one of the most important matches of his career by beating Shelton. Shelton was playing well, serving well, and he was also up 2-1 against Tiafoe. And the fact that Tiafoe came through that match playing exceptional tennis from a mental standpoint, that match was enormous. And he came into the Popyrin match with a lot of confidence because of it. So he started strong, winning the first set, and Popyrin had 5-3 40 love on his serve in the second set. Now, you could call it a choke, but if you watch those points, Tiafoe played some excellent tennis and definitely earned those points. Popyrin did not give them to Tiafoe, and Tiafoe was fighting very hard in this match. He was playing some good defense, ended up winning that second set 7-6. Popyrin was playing really well in the third, and then Tiafoe toughed out the fourth set. For me, the most impressive thing about Tiafoe is the combination of power, athleticism, but also feel, because it's rare to see a player with so much feel, with such soft hands, who can also hit the ball unbelievably hard and who's also an unbelievable athlete. The other player that comes to mind that has those attributes is Carlos Alcaraz. But to me, the way Tiafoe hits those backhand chip slices when the other person comes to the net right at their feet, the way he hits drop shots, the way he hits topspin lobs, the way he hooks those little angle forehand cross-court shots. The guy has some of the best hands that I've ever seen on the tennis court. So let's take a look at the draw. Tiafoe is on the bottom, and he's going to play Dimitrov. Dimitrov has had such a phenomenal season. I feel like something big is in store for Dimitrov this year. You could make an argument for any of these four guys to make the final. We got Fritz Zverev on top, and we got Dimitrov Tiafoe on the bottom. Each one of these guys could make the final. For me, the favorite, of course, is Zverev, but it's going to be super interesting to see who comes out of these quarterfinals and semifinals on the bottom half of the draw. Today, we have some good matches. Sinner against Paul. I think that's going to be a tough match, but I do see Sinner coming through that one. We got Medvedev against Borges. What a surprise. Borges was not playing well on the hard courts prior to the US Open, so it's a big surprise that he made it all the way through to the fourth round. Two players that are struggling. Jerry made the final of Rome and has not won a match since. I picked him to go to the third round. He lost to O'Connell in the first, and of course Tsitsipas. I have high regards for Tsitsipas as a player, and he's just in a big slump. He played so well in Monte Carlo. I thought that tournament was going to turn his season around, but it didn't. On the bottom, we have two Australians, Thompson and de Minaur. I do see de Minaur coming through that one. And then Mahach against Draper. That's a tough one to call. I think Draper is going to come through that one. Draper has one of the best serves on tour. And my feeling is that Draper is going to make the semifinals on the top half of the draw. In the women's draw, my pick, Rybakina, pulled out prior to the second round. So obviously that's not going to happen. But Sabalenka is playing so well. I'm sticking with this pick. I do think that Sabalenka is going to make the final on the bottom. She plays against Zheng next, who beat Vekic. I picked that wrong. Zheng is playing an amazing season. But I feel like Sabalenka is playing with a lot of confidence. Also, not having played the Olympics is an advantage, and I think it's going to show. But one great pick that I made is Badosa. I had a feeling that Badosa is going to make it through the semis. We'll see if she can beat Navarro or not, but she did make it through the quarterfinals. On top, I picked the upset of Pegula beating Swiatek. Let's see if that happens. Both of them have to make it into the quarters first with a couple of tough opponents. Samsonova for Swiatek and Schneider for Pegula is by no means easy. On the bottom, we have Paolini against Muchova, and I picked Osaka to make it through the quarters. Osaka did play well in the first round. She had a really tough draw. Muchova is such a fun player to watch, such a complete player. And Paolini is having such a great season. This might be the best match today, the Muchova-Paolini match on the women's side. So now that Rybakina is out, I am sticking with Pegula, and I'm going to say that Pegula is going to make it into the final. And will she beat Sabalenka? I don't know about that one. I think Sabalenka is going to take the title.